Hi, welcome. Let's talk about Firebase database structure. Building a properly structured database requires a bit of forethought. You need to plan how your data is going to be saved and later retrieved. All Firebase real-time database data is stored as JSON objects. When you add data to the JSON tree, it becomes a node in the existing JSON structure with an associated key. You can provide your keys on which you can also use the push method. There are some best practices for data structure in Firebase. Firstly, avoid much nesting of data. Flatten the data structure, amongst others. I'll be explaining with an example application which will cut across the basic functionality of the Firebase real-time database. Users will be authenticated with the email and password auth. A logged in user could upload a post to the post node of the database. Certain amount of posts will be retrieved for display. Comments could be posted to user posts as well. Heading straight to the Firebase console, we'll be having these child nodes as I've run the app for the first time. So we're going to be having the child node of the post comments, posts, user posts, and users. So all these node will actually keep data in key value pairs, as you can see right there. Can you see that in keys? Author, Bamo YK, the text, nice with the UID. These are key and the values. Cool. You also need to enable the email and password authentication right there in the auth. You have to get the sign-in method, email and password, enabled for this particular application to run. From here, I'll be headed straight to the source code right there in Address Studio. Right there, the build gradle will be including some dependency. I've covered the steps of integrating the Firebase cloud messaging, authentication, and other functionality of Firebase from Android Studio. Just head straight to your tools. You click on Firebase. You have the Firebase Drawer Assistant, which will display from the right, which you can see. If you are going for the cloud messaging, you click on that. You set up Firebase for cloud messaging. If it's for authentication, you set up the email and password. If it's for real-time database, which you'll be using, we're actually using authentication and real-time database. You can also set up Firebase through this process. After completing those steps, you will have the dependencies included on the fly. We'll be needing the recycler view, the card view, and the support design using 26.1.0, which is Marshmallow. We'll also be calling on the Firebase auth with the Firebase database. Very important. And you need to apply the plugin over here, the Google services. Right there in the build gradle, the project session, you will need to lock in the class path of the Google services. You might as well include the Maven URL, calling the maven.google.com right there in the all projects, in the repositories of the all projects. Once you have that set, you sync your application and get that set up. Let's look at the layouts of this application. We'll be having the activity main, which is the launcher, the new post, the sign in, very important, the post detail, likewise the fragment for all posts, the post author, which will be included on the fly in other layouts. Will also be including the post text, the item comment, which will serve as the item for each comment attached to the view order, and the same thing goes for the item post. Firstly, look at the activity main. This actually has the relative layout. We'll be using a tab layout here, and wrapped around the view pager. The view pager is a version 4 view support library that will enable you to actually organize your tabs, and you can have a swipe through effect from one tab to the other. You have the floating action button that will trigger the add post. Activity new post. After you click on the floating action button, you have to lock in the new post, which you have an edit text for the field of the title of the post, the body of the post, and the floating action body to commit that particular post. So you have that set up just that way. In the sign in, when you need to sign in into the application, the image view for the icon, which is the Firebase icon, calling from the drawer, the drawable, a linear layout wrapped around the form, where you have the email and password as the edit text, and the int is the email, while the edit text password int is password. You have that around the linear layout. Another linear layout wraps around the button for the sign in and the sign up, which you have right there. The two buttons, sign in and sign up. Cool. That's for the activity sign in. And let's get to look at the fragment for our post. This is actually housing the frame layout with the recycler view of an ID of called messages list that are actually going to populate all those posts you have actually pushed to the Firebase database. And you have to include the item post, which we included using the tools list item, pointing out the layout item post. Let's get to look at the item post, which will be in cards. This is the card view, where you have the first card of the post. So the post will actually look like what you're seeing right there from the preview. You have the post author. This is actually included as well from the layout called include post author, and a linear layout for the rating, which is called the star layout. It's like a rating bar. If you actually like that particular post, you are going to check on that. And it has an image view of the source, calling the IC toggle star outline from the drawable, and also the text to actually depict numbers of likes on that particular post. You'll be including the layout, the post text, which will be looking after this particular XML, the closing relative layout and the closing card view. Now let's look at the includes. The includes will be having, the first is the author, where you have the author image. Probably if you want to extend more on this application, you want to ask for the picture. So you can also save that to the real-time database and call it using Glide or other network loading libraries of images or Picasso. You can actually extend more on that for you. So you have the layout set up for the author and the text view for the name of the author. And you will be including the post text, which is the bunch of the text that will be included right there on the card of each post, which calls the title of the post and the post body. So you have that set up. Now that's cool. Let's get to look at the comments. We have a comment section where you can easily add comments to that particular post. An image view of the comment photo, which is actually going to be the user's photo, the particular user that is commenting on a post, and a text view for the name of the author of that post, of that comment rather, and the comment body of the comment that the particular user is actually placing on the post. So we have the layout set up. From this you should understand what we're expecting right there in the application, and we're actually going to be doing a CRUD implementation. We'll be creating into the database, we'll be reading from it, we'll be posting comments, and we'll be talking about the child nodes that were used. Heading straight to the Java classes, we have it structured this way in three fragments, three packages: fragment, models, view order, and the outer classes. In the outer classes, we are having the main activity, the post activity, the detail, the sign-in activity, and the base activity that works with the main activity. Right here in the models, we have the comments, which we are actually hold on to different users, and the post and the user. We'll be looking at the models starting from the post. In the posts model, you're going to have some values expected. Firstly, the UID, the author, title, body, and the star count. These are very important. Mostly the UID, author, title, and body, where you get to create a constructor here and passing those values. They are all string values, which you'll be expecting. And there is a map to the key value pairs that we're actually expecting, and this will be a replica of what will be in the database. You will be putting the UID of the user, the author, that's the name, the title of the post, the body of the post, the count of star or likes, and the stars itself of that particular user right there to the post is related. These are all metadata related to a particular post. Cool. And you'll be mapping it down to the keys and the values. The values will be gotten from this particular class. That's what that means. Now, a user, what is unique to the user is the username and the email address, because we're actually using authentication of email and password. That's username and password. So from the email, we'll extract the username. We'll get to talk about how we've done that. So the metadata unique to the user is the username and the email, which we're passing right there in the user class. And for the comment now, let's get to see the metadata involved. We have the UID, the author, and the text. The UID of the user that actually placed the comment, the author, which is the username, and the text, the comment text. So that those are the things expected right there in the comments. So we'll get to use all those values to map data, to bind data together, and to get and extract data from. We'll be starting with a sign-in activity, which will be using the username, the email and password authentication. We have a layout ready, and this extends a base activity. The base activity is just going to work around other activity where you get to have the app compact, and where you get to also have other implementation. So you're actually going to get that done. This implements the view on click listener, and we'll get to look at the base activity. The base activity extends the app compact just like we've known, and the progress dialog is also initialized there, where you could also hide the progress dialog method, where you have to dismiss the progress dialog. And you have the method called the getUID that actually first of all find the Firebase authentication, gets the instance, and get the current user. So this will be able to identify the current user of or the current user that logs into the application. There you could extract its UID. So you have that set up in the getUID base activity. So other calling activities can use all these methods. So that's just what that means. So any activity that extends the base activity would automatically inherit all these methods. Still on the sign-in activity. Now you have the database reference. Very important. Once you need to, because we need to make reference to the database, you need to create an object of the database reference. The Firebase auth, which authentication are we using? So we have an object of that, and we're calling the edit text for the email and password. Likewise for the sign-in button and the sign-up button. In the occurrence method, you need to initialize the database reference, where you get the instance and get the reference. The same thing goes for the authentication. You get the instance of the Firebase auth. Initialize the fields of the views and set on click listener to the buttons, the sign up and the sign in. The sign in and sign up. That's all. On start of your activity, you check the auth on activity stats, whereby you get if the current user is not equals to null. On auth success, you're going to pass the get current user since it's not null. Now let's look at the sign in method. We firstly show the progress dialog, which you're calling from the base activity, and you extract the values from the email and password edit text and pass it to a variable. Now you call on the sign in with email and password. Since you want to sign in with the email and password, this is the sign in on the auth, which is the Firebase auth platform. We are using the email and password, which you have it as the email and password. You also add the incomplete listener. This is the addition where you need to override the incomplete. Once this process is completed, you add the progress dialog. That means is either going to be successful or not. Now, if the task is successful, you're going to call the onAuth success. We'll get to look at this method right there, and you pass in the parameter get the result and get the user into this onAuth success method. Now, if it fails, you call sign in failed. That's for the sign in. Now, for the sign up, the same process will be done. You show the progress dialog, you extract the values from the edit text of the email and password. You call on the create user with email and password. The other time is sign in with email and password. You should understand the authentication we are doing here. You pass in those values. You also override the incomplete method. And now, if the task is successful, you also pass that to the onAuth success. If not, the sign up failed. Now, the onAuth success that was used right there in the course of the sign in and sign up. This takes the Firebase user because you've been able to extract the get user right there. And now, what you're going to do with that user, the user name from email, our method is triggered here. Now you want to actually extract a name from the user from the email, where you pass in the get mail, because now this an object of a user. You're calling the get email since you're passing in the email and password. You now have the email. With this now, you'll be able to get the username. Now, what is going to be running right there in the user name from email method? This is actually what is going to run before it actually plays that value into the variable username. Firstly, you check if the email contains an @ sign. That's what this is doing. And you split at the point of the @. So the first bunch of alphabets before the @ will be splitted. And that will actually be the first index called the 0. And the rest will follows. So that will actually be the username. So we are trying to get the first bunch of alphabets before the @ sign of an email, and that will replace the username. So that is what you will be returning, and that's what we'll be getting into the string variable of the username. Now you're going to write to a new user. Trigger the write new user method, which we have right there. This is the method that is triggered. Now let's look at the body of the method. You get the UID. That's the first parameter of that. Now you have a username since you've been able to extract the user, the bunch of alphabets from the email, and you also get the email address. So those are the three attributes. Now let's get to look at how you're going to do that. Now, an object of the user, which we have in the model, is associated with the name and email. So that's the two values. Now you call the database object of the database reference. The child node uses, you're trying to save to the user's node, and passing the child user ID with the set value user. A quick peep into the database structure. Let's get to see the database structure. Right there in the users node, we'll get to see Now we could see it in the users node. Can you see we are locking in the email and the username? That's how we could save that right there into the users node. So you should understand how this actually works. You can see we use the Firebase reference, database reference, to actually get that saved based on the POJO, the name and email we had. So you could have that set up. Now from the sign-in, we could look at the main activity. The main activity is going to be simple, which extends the base activity, as we all know. Rather than the onCreate method, you're going to create the adapter that will return a fragment for each section. We know we've used a view pager, and now we're going to actually have a fragment array where we instantiate the different fragments. We'll be using the recent post fragment, the post fragment, and the top post fragment. So those are the three fragments right there in the view pager. And we gave it a name, recent, my post, and top post as a string array. Cool. You get the item, get the count of the fragment length, that's going to be 3, and get the page title as well, because you have to place the page title to each of the tabs. So you have to set up the view pager with the sections adapter. Well, we have a view pager object right there, view pager. You find the ID container, we have that right there in the layout. You set the adapter to the mPager adapter, which is actually going to be the fragment pager adapter we'll be looking at right there. And you set that, and now the tab layout as well, which will point out the ID of the tabs. You set up the view pager to the object of the mView pager. Cool. Now the button will launch the new post activity. That's the button that will launch the new post is the FAB, which is a floating action button sitting right at the bottom end of the main activity. Override the onClick method, and this time you'll be calling the new post activity to actually make a new post. So we could actually have that set up. Now also we have the options item menu from the menu main, and this is actually going to log out the user on click of that logout options. Now let's see how you're going to log out the user. You call the Firebase auth, you get an instance, and you call the sign out method. Once you call that, the user signs out of the application, and the get current user will be null. So he's going to sign out, and you push an intent to the sign in activity once that's finished, and you call the finish so that you won't be able to go back to that calling activity. So that's how you actually get that done. This is actually from the menu, and the menu main, which you set up right there in the menu sub package called menu main. You have that the logout action logout ID with the title called logout. You have that set up. Now let's get to look at the new post. Want to have a post to it also extends the base activity, and it's going to inherit all methods from the base activity. You declare the database reference anytime you are working with Firebase database. Always declares the reference and its object. This will interact with the nodes you've actually created or you'll be pushing to create. You have the edit text, the floating action button to submit. The two edit text are the field of the title and the body. I think we've covered that in the layout. And the onCreate method, you initialize the database reference. The same thing goes with the other fields you'll be looking at. Even the submit button will be initialized. And on submit, when you set on click listener to the submit button, you override the on click, you trigger another method called submit post, which you have here. And this is where you actually strip out the values from the title and from the body. You pass that to a variable, and you use that. This is actually a sort of validation to check if the text still is not empty, if the title is not empty, or if the body is not empty. You set an error, and if it's not, you move further. Now you disable the button so there's no multi-post when you are trying to submit. So let's get to see how you're going to pass those values to the database. You start a single value read. The user ID is going to be the get UID of that particular user. And now the database reference will call on the child node called users. It's passing the user ID, which is the UID, and add the listener for single value event, which instantiates the value event listener, and you have to override on data change because you are trying to map data to the database. You override on data change, and you also override on cancelled as well. Now let's look at the data change that takes the data snapshot object. The same data snapshot can be used to get the values from the user, which we have the POJO, the user, which is the username and the email that we had. Now test if the user is equals to null. It's actually going to fetch out an error, and if not, it will be writing the new post based on the user ID, which is the UID, the username. I think we have that from the user POJO, title and body. We've actually stripped that out to the variables, so we could pass that to the write new post method. We'll get to look at the write new post method now. So those are the parameters the write new post needs. It needs the UID, the username, title, and body. And now you have to create a new post at the user post node, taking on the user ID and the post ID. And simultaneously, you have to also put that into the general post. So that post must be unique to that user, and at the same time must be in the general post, so it could fetch all posts. That's just what that is. So the database reference will call on the posts. Now you are creating a post node at this point in time. When you call on a push on a node, you are going to create that in the database, and you get the key. An object of the posts. Now what are the values we'll be needing in the post? We'll be needing ID on the constructor. We'll be needing UID, the author, the title, and the body. Those are the things we'll be needing, and now we'll be able to pass that since we have that from the write new post. The user ID is the UID, the username, the title, and the body. Can you see that? Now we need to map the key values down to what we have right there in the database. So we'll call the map to the string objects, which will have the post values, and also for the child updates. Now in the child updates, this is where you're going to actually put to different paths. You'll be putting to the posts node, and you also be putting to the users post node with the user ID, which is the UID, and / with the key and the post values will actually pass into it. So let's quickly look at how that is being structured right there. You can see now we have two nodes: the posts, which this is the UID, the body, the author, the body, the count, the title, and the UID. This is an identifier rather. And let's get to look at the user's post, another identifier. Can you see this ID is unique to this, telling you that this post is owned by this particular user, right there in the user post, and is also in the general post. So that's what that means. So you could still have it this way. So that's just what that structure depicts. So you could write new post. We have that set up. The point in time of writing new posts, we also need to call those posts from the fragments, where we have the post fragment, the top posts. Now we want to manipulate how we call those data back. In the post fragment, it extends the post list fragment that calls on the child node of the user post. That's the users, the post of the user. That's a particular post unique to the user. For the top post fragment, now you want to know the top post by numbers of stars. that generally that were liked by all users. So that will be actually categorized with the number of stars that are add. So that's where you could have the database reference. Now we have the query now to actually, it's just like you're selecting, just like what we know from MySQL. Well, you will be selecting from this, but since we're having it in JSON, we'll just hit on the nodes. Now the database reference call on the child node called the user post with the child user ID, which is going to be the UID, or the user get UID. You can also see it here, and it's actually going to order that post by what, the star count nodes. So it's going to order it by the star count. So you have it, the post that are the most count will actually come first, and you return that particular post query. All this needs the post list fragment. If you should notice, they all extends the post list fragment. Now the post list fragment extends the fragment, and you have the database reference object, since you're going to communicate with the database, and we'll be introducing the Firebase recycler adapter, different from the normal recycler adapter, but is unique to Firebase, where you have the post, which is the purview of the post, and the view order, the post view order, which has an adapter. Same goes the recycler view and the linear layout manager. In the onCreate view of this fragment, you'll be inflating the fragment of all posts, not called all posts. You also be initializing the database reference. The recycler view now can point to the root view of its ID, the message list, where you have the recycler view, and set as fixed size true. You have to return the root view in the create view. Now to mimic and to still have the activity look and feel, you can override the onActivity created. So in here you can pass all what you've always passed in the activity the same way. You just throw them into the onActivity created without no worries. In this activity created, you have to call the super onActivity created save instance state, which will be passed from the bundle. Very important. If you didn't call this line, there will be an error. And you could now set up the layout manager in a reverse layout. That's when we need to set the reverse layout, the set stack from end, and set up to the layout manager. So let's set up the Firebase recycler adapter with a query we got. The post queries, now let's get to see, get the query from the database reference. We have the recycler options. They're actually going to build from the post metadata. You now set the query. The post query will be passed into it from the database reference to with the post class. You build that up, so that will serve as the options we'll be using. Now in the adapter, we pass these options. We instantiate the Firebase recycler adapter, and pass that options that we've actually built up. You have to create the view order, just like the normal way you create your view order when you're dealing with recycler view. Now this item post for all post, you need our layout. Now let's get to look at the bind view order when we'll be binding data to that layout fields. Set the click listener for the whole post view. There's going to be a key, which will be the post reference from the database reference, which will get the reference position. That's going to get the position, just like what we all know. Get the adapter position. Get the key. Now we're trying to make the view order clickable. So you set the view order item view set on click listener, where you instantiate the view on click listener to the view order. That's for each item on the recycler view. Now you set an on click handler to it. This is where you trigger an intent to the detail, and you have to pass an extra, which is the post key. Very important, which is the reference to the get key. So that is actually going to identify each item on the recycler list of all posts. So you could start an activity for, and that will actually push down to the post detail activity. Now you need to determine if the current user has liked this post and set the UI accordingly. Now if the stars contains the key of the get UID of that user, you have to make this toggle, which will actually show the deep yellow star, else it's going to show an empty. That means none has been liked. Now let's bind the post to the view order, and you'll be setting the on click listener of the star button. This is going to be for the star button when you are clicking on the star, when you're having it toggled. You override on click as well for the star view, and you need to write to both places the post is stored. The post is stored in the post node, and it's also stored in the user posts node for the general post, and the post for each user. For the general post, you store that right there using the post key from the post ref. You get the key. And for the user post, the child node, which is the UID for the model, and the post ref, that's the path is of three parts: the user post, the UID, and the post ref key, just like what we had showed. And for the post, it's just a path, the post node, and the post ref, where you get the key of the ref, which we're all seeing here. This is the key. This is what we mean by the key over here. If you should notice, just one node, one path, the post and the key. And for the user post, we're having it right there, the UID, this is UID, and the post key, and before we have other aspect of the body. So we should understand how these structures are really knitted together. So the post, the UID, before the post reference key. So you set two transactions to that on start click on the global post ref and for the user post ref. You have that set up. Now on start clicked, you'll be able to know which star was clicked, how to actually set up the UID on that, how to remove the star, and how to make the count. So all is done right there in the on start click method. It's actually going to take the reference to the posts from the database reference and run the transaction and override the transaction result do transaction. These are multi-mutable data. It's actually going to be able to mutate it, and you still have an object of the post from the post class, which you get the value, and test if p is null. If the post is null, the transaction success is going to be calling the mutable data. Now if the stars contains the key that's of the UID, you now want to be able to identify that, okay, this star contains this UID. You call the star count, you unstar the post and remove the self from stars. So that's what you're going to do, and you remove the UID as well. Else, if it's not containing, you're going to add the self to stars. So you're adding your UID to the star. So that's just what you set the value and report this transaction success, where you set the value to the immutable data, and on complete, the database error, if there is, if the transaction completed or not, get that done. So for that, you could be able to have the posts list fragment for all posts, which you could actually use. We still have the get UID to get the current user UID, and the get query with the database reference. The recent post fragment now is going to make a query, and this query is going to be to the child posts, and it's going to limit to the first 100. So you're going to have the first 100 posts displayed, not all posts. So it's actually going to limit. There's a limit to that. The last 100 posts, these are automatically the 100 most recent due to the sorting by the push keys. You have that set up. So you could have a particular post to the user, the top post based on the stars, the likes, that is being awarded to the particular post of that user, and you could also see the recent posts uh, based on 100 recent posts from the general post. If you should notice, the child notice from the general post, not from the user post. So you could see how we could actually make that work. And now we have a detail page. That'll be the last thing we'll be talking here. A detail page will be expecting a key called a post key, and in here we'll also have the post reference. This is where we'll do the comments. The comment adapter. You have a text view for the author, the title, the body, the comment field, the comment button, and the comment recycler. In the onCreate method, you need to call the intent to the post key that you are actually expecting, and this is actually going to be the post key here, and this will be what we'll be using as the child node after the post and after the post comment as well. Now we have for the post reference, we also have for the comment reference. After the post comment node, we have the child to the post ref, the key to that particular post as a reference key to the post. You have it right there. Now you initialize the fields, the author title, the body field, the comment button, even the comment recycler, and set on click listener to the comment button, and set the layout manager to the comment recycler. That will be a sort of small recycler after the detail page, just below the detail. On start, you add the value event listener to the post, and you have that set up, and you have to override on data change, where you're going to get the post object and use the values to update the UI. You have that where you set the text from the post author, the title, and the body. You now have an object from the data snapshot get value. On cancelled, that's failed to load a post. Now you add the value is listener to the post reference, and you keep the copy of the post listener so we can remove it when the app stops. And you also listen for comments, calling the comments, instantiating the comment adapter, passing these and the comments reference. You set the adapter to the comment recycler, which was created. That's on stop. On click now the on post comments. Let's get to look at the on post comments. We have the get UID. Cool. Now you also get the instance, get a reference to the child of users. Now you want to identify the user, followed by the UID. That's the path. Now you add the listener for single value events on data change. Always override on data change and on cancel. That's the two methods you override when you call the add listener for single value events. Now you have a data snapshot. This could get a value from the user class. Now what are you going to get from the user class? The username and the email. So those are the values you'll be getting for the user class. And you create a new comment object from the comment text. That's from you extracting from the comment field the get text, the edit text. Now you want to map that down to the comment pojo, so that the comment will have the value. Now you have a UID already. The author name will be the username. Now the comment text, that's what you've been able to extract from the comment edit text, which you have saved right there in the string. Now you push the same comment as it appears to the list, where you use the comment reference from the database reference. You push, you set the value to the comment object that houses all those values. Now you clear the field, clear the edit text, the comment field at this point in time. Now let's get to look at the comment view order, which has a public view order constructor, where you'll be able to initialize the author view and the body of the comment. You have that set up. Now the adapter, it calls on the recycler view, normal recycler view we used to know. You pass in the comment view as a generic. Now we have a list of the comment IDs and array list, and for the comments. In the comment adapter, instantiate the context, and you also instantiate the database reference. On the database reference, you always need a database reference. Now you have to create a child event listener. over here, instantiate the child event listener an object, and you override because you've on child added to the comments. Now a data snapshot to make the database change, and another parameter called the previous child name. Now you're going to add a new comment uh, as it's going to be displayed to the list. Call the data snapshot to get a value from the comment class, which is the POJO of the comment. What are we expecting from the comment? UID, author, and the text. Now you're going to add the data snapshot key. You add that to the comment, which is the list of the comments, and you notify item inserted based on the size of the comments you inserted. Now you have to still override on child changed. This is when a comment has changed. You use the key to determine if we are displaying these comments, and if so, you display the changed comment. So you have that set up with a comment index. That's an index of the comment key, and you check if the comment index is greater than -1. That's you replace with the new data, where you set the comment index and the new comment. That's to the comments, comments over here, which is the list of the comments, which takes an index and the new comments. So you also notify item changed, that you've actually a new comment has been replaced or has been added to the comment POJO. You have the unchild removed. That's if a comment has changed, you use the key to determine if you are displaying this comment, and if so, you remove it. So that's what the unchild removed method is going to do. You also override unchild moved. That's a comment has changed the position. Use the key to determine if you are displaying this comment, and if so, you move it. These are different methods you could override and use in the course of the Firebase database. And the uncancelled, that's going to be a toast that failed to load comment. Add the child listener to the ref, and you store the reference to the listener so it can be removed on app stop. Have that set up. We have the onCreate view order for the comments now, because we have a comment session right then the detail, and we have the bind view order as well that actually bind the author view and the body of the comments, and you have that set up, and you could count the comment size, how many comments were uploaded for that particular post. So you have that set up as well. This is a bunch of this is just a basic startup to how you actually create a post or create a user, a kind of social network using Firebase database. And you could see how we use the database structure extensively, where we could bind different posts to different user, and the way we could call them, and the way we could share posts to a general post and to a unique user post, and to the way we actually use the user rating, or let's say the star, to actually track the amount of like posts for a particular user, and so on. Actually do a lot of back and forth here. I will implore you to get your hands on the code and study it, as it's quite extensive. And if you are quite new to Firebase, I will implore you to check the documentation as well, and lay your hands on the starter of Firebase, where you start up with Firebase. And if you've been using Firebase for a while, this can be a refresher for you on how to actually use the Firebase database structure extensively. And right there in the manifest, you only need to register the internet and the detail, the post detail that were used. So those are the two major things you actually need right there. And you also need the new post activity. Let's not forget that, with the sign-in activity. Those activities that were used, the new post activity, sign-in activity, and the post detail activity. So I will be showing you a screencast of this application so you could see how the flow went, and I will also employ you to lay hands on the code also to actually understand fully how this implementation work. Thank you guys for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial, and God will always bless you for following my videos and for subscribing as well. Have a wonderful time. Bye bye for now.